Good evening, folks. This is Chris in Rochester, New York. I drove up from Pennsylvania today on Martin Luther King Day to meet with refugees and got greeted with about 4 inches of snow. Started snowing just as I arrived in Rochester and had to clean 2 inches off the car after I met with refugees to go out to get a new mouse because my 15-year-old mouse crapped out on me and to get something to eat. Meanwhile, during the meet and greet with the refugees, there were 6 of them here, plus a South African who lives in the area who joined us. So 7 people came to meet and greet. Pretty good. During that conversation, a pretty consistent topic that came up was the level of support from the Refugee Assistance Office, which is Church World Services here in Rochester. I'm going to go there tomorrow. They have failed to answer my email from last week. They've also failed to answer my telephone calls to the office in Rochester last week, as well as telephone calls to the New York City office, which is in the same state. And then, of course, my telephone call to their headquarters in Indiana. So I'm going to go by tomorrow, see if I can't get a few minutes with them and find out what's going on from their perspective. It doesn't appear that the refugees have overly realistic expectations. They seem to be in line with what they should be getting. And as a taxpayer who is funding this, I would expect certain services to be provided for these refugees, which from their statements appears is not occurring. It's a bit disturbing. But I want to talk about the most disturbing thing that came up tonight. During the course of the conversation, a refugee family, the husband and wife, both told us that when they arrived, the snarky attitude of the case officer working with us said to them, "This isn't a red state. This isn't a red state." To which they were puzzled. They said, "What's a red state?" They didn't really understand the politics of it. Basically, the person was, my language, not what they said. I'm interpreting it for you. Trump doesn't reign supreme here. So too bad for you. We don't care about you because Trump brought you over here. They didn't say that, but the mere fact that a refugee assistance officer, a case officer, actually introduced politics into a non-political situation where people have come here on a humanitarian concern to save them from racial persecution is deeply disturbing. Deeply disturbing. And if it's true, it's something that should be investigated by the USCIS. We cannot give contracts to faith-based organizations and others helping refugees when they're using politics to make their decisions. And of course, I've been talking about Church World Service for the better part of a year now, since, 9 months or so, since it was announced that they were handling cases in South Africa. Of course, it has been a year because they initially came out and attacked the Trump administration for suspending the program, not because they're great humanitarians, but because they're greedy. They wanted the money and they had to lay off all their people. That's my assessment. That's not their statement. I wouldn't have their word because they don't bother to share it because they don't answer media inquiries going back 9, 10 months ago. So all I have is my analysis based on the facts. And the facts appear to be that they're bumhurt, that they're not getting as much money as they once got. They make the excuses about the program, but the bottom line is that Church World Service made it pretty clear that politics is what they do. If you look them up, Church World Service, on NGO Finder and Charity Finders and things like that, you will find that they do an awful lot of political advocacy. Now, this is a serious conflict of interest. A refugee assistance agency, which is supposed to be helping people on a humanitarian basis, receiving millions of dollars from the U.S. government, over 180 million per year. Over $180 million per year in recent years. They're receiving this from the U.S. taxpayer to help refugees, whether they're from Myanmar or the DRC or from South Africa. But they have people in their local offices who are interjecting politics into this, which makes sense. The president of the organization, Rick Santos, has interjected politics and they have political advocacy. They're part of the BDS movement. That's right, boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. There is no place in this. This is a clear conflict of interest, and either Church World Services needs to get out of the business of political advocacy and into the business of refugee assistance only, or the U.S. government needs to take a hard look at the serious conflict of interest here. The fact that Church World Services doesn't answer emails, it doesn't answer telephone calls, and it doesn't return telephone calls is even more disturbing. Do they answer the phone when the U.S. government calls? Because they don't answer when the media calls. They don't answer when refugees in Rochester call. They may be doing in other locations, but there's a serious problem somewhere in Church World Services. I give them an opportunity to respond, and if they want to respond, I'll be happily give them airtime. But there is a serious problem here. And the fact that a refugee assistance officer, the first conversation with 2 South African refugees is that, well, this isn't a red state. What the hell does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Not a damn thing. Something is rotten in Denmark. Oh yeah, literally, there really is something rotten in Denmark, as you see with their colony in Greenland they're trying to hold on to with their claws. Something's definitely rotten in the Kingdom of Denmark. Of course, that's a phrase from Shakespeare, but we're talking here specifically about something is rotten with what's going on here. It is inappropriate, wrong, not acceptable for refugee assistance officers to be interjecting politics to refugees. This is not acceptable. And Church World Service owes us an answer on that. If they don't want to give us those answers, then I will go to Washington, D.C. and try to get the answers myself. If it's innocent, it's innocent. But I can't see how it possibly could be innocent that a refugee assistance officer is talking about red states and blue states. And if we did this in the U.S. government, the Hatch Act would be slammed down on top of us so fast. We cannot allow our contractors to use their political beliefs and their bigotry against refugees. What say you, South Africa? Cheers.